Hello and good evening, one and all, to what is round 4 of the oNiD Community Racing Simhound British oNiD4 series. Open wheel racing, Thruxton. What could get any better? High-speed circuit where the drivers are pretty much flat out from turn 3 all the way to the final chicane. Downforce will be king, slipstream will be king, and we'll see who can make the most of it as we go into the qualifying session for the first race of 2 races this evening, if I recall correctly. My brain's gone all fuzzy from all the excitement. In the comms booth with me, however, it is well, it's always a pleasure to share the comms booth with Scotty. And good evening to you, Scotty. It's good to be back.
It is good to have you back, Aidan. Of course, missed last week. Did you enjoy your expo?
I did. I had way too much time to spend money, and I've had all the fun that comes with it as well. And my bank account is looking a little bit thinner than it used to be. And Jay Cotty has resubscribed 2 months. Thank you so much. Welcome to the stream. But yes, good weekend away. Yesterday missed this. I was preparing to make the trek to Birmingham for the NEC and staying over for what was a very fun weekend. Qualifying is very much now underway. Cars have just started to go out to circuit, and we will see cars starting to put lap times in. The first car on a lap, if it's correct to my timing screens, is Ollie Stones. Let's just jump to him now and see whereabouts he is. He's going through the first chicane, and we'll see, and we'll follow this lap as he goes around through that first chicane. Now he's gone through the first chicane. It's now just sit back a little bit. I was speaking to a couple of drivers prior to the stream going live. They said, go through the first sector, just put the foot down, we just cruise.
Yeah, you've really got to focus on the two chicanes, one in the first sector and the chicane right at the end of the lap, but just because they're the only 2 points does not mean that this is an easy track. The braking zone for this final chicane, very tricky. You can see drivers coming out of Church Corner now. On the run through Brooklands, coming up towards the club chicane. You're going to see here, braking boards on the left. Drivers having to turn into this long right-hander and slow the car down for this chicane. Careful of track limits and try not to settle the curb.
Ooh.
Through chicane, a spin for Matt Cleaver in front of Oliver Stone. That's given them a bit of a scare. And they set our first time, a 1:11.3 for the rest of the field to beat. It is immediately done so by Matt High, who will put them to the front of the table. I imagine Oliver Stone, bit of time left on table, not having a car spin in front of them, and now with Biv cleaner to Ashford now coming into the final chicane, running wide of the first apex and just compromising the entire chicane. You can see how important it is to get the braking right. Getting it wrong, well, lose you a lot of time, and I imagine, no, not invalidated, but 2.5 seconds off the pace as Jack Dan goes to the top for the timetables now with 1:10.6.
Yeah, they do. Times are a tumbling, and that slipstream is going to be key, just like Matt High does here. He's on a lap at the moment, I do believe. He's got a couple of cars ahead of him, pulling him along the circuit, 0.3 of a second to find to get to pole position. However, he's not there at the minute. Luca Monroe gets up into third, 1:11.1. But good half a second behind Jack Dan as it currently stands. Into the final chicane they go. It is across the line in a very brief moment. And it will be at 1:11.1. Not an improvement. Stays put for now.
3 cars coming head to tail through the final chicane, almost as if they were in a race. Of course, we talk about this being one of the fastest circuits in the UK, if not the fastest. So slipstreaming, like it was last week, will be very important here. And with that flat out section, as you mentioned, Aidan, from turn 3 all the way to turn 10, you know, you will get to your top speed, and having a bit of slipstream to try and help bump that up a little bit could be very useful.
Look at the slipstream that Jack Dan's just got. He's got a car ahead of him, but that's a lap time. He's just set 1:10.4, and Carter gets there as well. 1 minute. What's a 1:10.6 of new personal best, and then puts up into second, into 2/10 away from the pole sitter. Times are looking spread out a little bit, and I think it's about working with one another, trying to find a driver that's going to be happy enough to give you a slipstream, not going to be in your way too much, and getting that advantage to get up the order.
That's the difficult part, is getting that slipstream without compromising yourself. Just because you've got someone in front of you doesn't mean you're going to gain time. You know, this is a perfect point as we go on board with Aidan Carter, currently sitting in second place and leading the Pro Championship, having been on the podium for all but one race so far this season. Coming up to the final chicane. Now, this is where you don't want someone in front of you, someone that might hold you up through the chicane. In Carter Free are throwing it over the curbs. They're getting very aggressive. Is the lap still valid? We'll see if it pops up here at the end. It is valid, but it is not an improvement such as Jack Dan did, has put themselves further clear at the top, a 1:10.1.
Interesting. That is a very good lap from Jack Dan. Improves on his time by almost half a second, or isn't it? 0.4 seconds. Oh, Aidan goes wide. My twin brother from another mother, who's very much off circuit or down the pits, as we have about almost halfway through qualifying, and we can see the everyone bar Jory Scrower and Paulo Tempara, who's still in the pits, not yet taken to the circuit, yet to set a lap time. We'll see what Jory's doing. Let's jump on board with him. He is on a lap, but he hasn't validated the past couple of laps.
Easily done with that final chicane. You can see you can't really attack the chicane, but attack it a little too much and it will, either the curbs will throw you round, like we've seen with Matt Cleaver at the start of the session, or your lap will get invalidated. Very wide of the apex, very difficult to see when you have to turn in for Church Corner. You have to turn in much earlier than you expect as well to carry the momentum, hold it flat out and pick up the apex. Comes over quite late to the left hand side, trying to slow the car down while getting it turned in for the right hander, maybe a little bit wide of the left hand side apex. Could have used a bit more to open up the chicane a bit more, but across the line now for sure, and they'll bump themselves onto the board 2.3 seconds off the top. But to the front row now is Oliver Stone, 10th and a half back from Jack Dan, currently on pole.
Good lap from Ollie, only 1/10 off. He needs to find that last 1/10. We've got a couple of out laps, quite a few out laps actually. Tomlinson, McCardle, Carter and Dan all on out laps as it stands. And a couple of, I think, all the cars, bar that Paulo Tempara, not have set a lap time. Just waiting for that one last driver to set a lap time, but still sitting in the pit lane. 26 drivers this evening. A fantastic showing for it's been a really good, well-attended iRacing season here on oNiD. And we'll hopefully see these guys fight it out. It's just going to be absolutely mental to see all of them slipstreaming, trying to get past one another. But I think once one car has made a mistake and falls back from the pack a little bit, it won't be that long before we see a couple of breakaway cars, those who are going to be able to take advantage of the higher positions and get away from the rest of the field.
Yeah, the drivers have confidence to carry a little bit more speed through the chicanes. See Oliver Stone through, running a bit wide. I'm not sure if that'd be on track limits. See if a time does pop up for them here. One does do so, but was off the pace for Oliver Stone that time round. As it's going to come into the pits for a new set of tyres. Still have 6 minutes on the clock for the drivers to set their times in. Remember, when we do hit the 15-minute mark, that will be it. Drivers will not be allowed to finish their current laps. So you got to make sure you get across the line before that time runs out. Matt Cleaver now coming up to the line. See, it looks like they invalidated that lap, as we see Ben Brown having stepped back into the cockpit after joining us in the comms box last week. Already up to P3, so has found a good lap, maybe found a good bit of slipstream to get themselves up the order. Currently is sitting ahead of our championship leader, but still quite a gap between them and the front row. 3/10 as we see a car in front of them going wide. Can Ben maybe pick up a bit of slipstream that could help them on this lap and help bridge the gap that there is to the front row?
Maybe, possibly. Well, he gets that right out of the way. That was the Eddie Jordan livery of... I don't remember who that was, but I think that was Ben Holmes, potentially. No, he runs his own livery. However, we're sitting talking about cars. We're talking about times improving. Jack Dan gets an even better time on the board, edging nearer to the 109s. Only 1/10 to go before he finds himself to the 109s. Ben Brown does a 111.2, doesn't improve on that lap, and he goes for another. But just under 5 minutes to go. It's still all to play for. Who can get the slipstream? Who can get the best run through this, what is essentially a flat-out sector here, as we finish up the qualifying.
It is a tightly contested field from 3rd to 18th. Those 16 cars within 8/10 of a second. The front two, Jack Dan, Oliver Stone pulling away a little bit, and a few drivers struggling to get as close. Jack Page improving on that lap. See Jack Dan bouncing over those curbs, really attacking that final chicane. Is it valid? Is it a quicker lap? It is into the 1:09.969. Just extending that margin as they look to get themselves up from P4 in the championship at the moment. But Thruxton has also got themselves up within a second of the provisional pole time into P8. And Peter Stather also up, putting themselves into the top 10.
Good laps from all. We're doing it well and doing it right. Especially with Jack Dan, and now 2/10 of 3/10. Oh, actually, no, I stand corrected. 2/10 now ahead of P2. Oliver Stone does improve ever so slightly. Ben Brown is on a lap, but not yet to finish. Luca Monroe just coming to the start-finish line. We'll see if he can improve for the United Sim team. Down through the final chicane. It looks like you're able to take care, but not invalidate. People getting away with that and using the final chicane cars quite liberally. Comes to the line, it's going to be a 111.1. It's not going to be an improvement on his best time as it stands, and he'll get another couple of laps in, especially with these quick, almost sub 70 second laps.
Yeah, time for 2 more laps as Ash Hill has bumped themselves into the top 10. Ben Brown through the final chicane as Peter Stather puts themselves into the top 5. Ben, though, still holding on to P3, trying to bridge that gap still to the top 2. Has not done it on that previous lap. Invalidated even.
Possibly invalidated and backs off, letting traffic through. So I wonder if he was on a lap invalidated and then he's going to go for an out lap and then try and squeeze in one last lap. He'll just about have the ability to.
I wonder if he needs to let the tyres cool down a little bit. A lot of fast right-handers through here. And while they are flat out, those that aren't flat out, you do want optimal grip for them. So just letting the tyres cool down, get a little bit of space, a little breather for Ben before attacking another lap. Can see the conditions here, 22 degrees ambient, 41 degrees track temps. That is on the warm side. Actually, Ben Brown has one of the oNiD cars coming through. I wonder if he's lending a little slipstream hand. It looks to be. Pulls out right at the last second from the number 77 car. That is Dan Tomlinson, who's now coming through the chicane. Down in 18th place, though, has a couple of cars in close proximity to him. It's a bit of a slide over the final chicane, but can he improve the time with the help of some slipstream from Ben? No, it does not. So now will Ben get the return of favour? It will be these drivers' final lap as we have just a minute left in the session. So times count here. And remember, after our feature racer, we'll be reversing the top 15. So you don't have yourself up in that top 15, currently held by Staples. Starting to see drivers head back to pit lane as they have maybe not quite got a final lap together. Luca Monroe displacing Mike Pfeifers for P7. Adrian Rich displacing Dan Tomlinson, getting themselves up to 18th. Here is Ben Brown now. One last attacking slipstream from Dan Tomlinson. Will Dan pull over? He does indeed. Can Ben get to the line in time? Though the time is ticking, it's going to be a little bit tight here. Tighter line going into this final chicane from Ben than we've seen for some other drivers. Big cut over that left-hand side carpet. Someone has had a bit of an instant through final chicane, and so has Ben Brown, getting onto the grass, spinning out, and will spin across the line, obviously not improving on that final lap as time has run out, and we have our grid for our first feature race.
We do indeed. It is Jack Dan on pole, followed by Oliver Stone. Ben Brown third. Couldn't improve on that final attempt and runs it wide out the final chicane and has a bit of a moment. Aidan Carter fourth. Peter Stafer fifth. Lewis Mason sixth. Luca Monroe seventh. Mike Peppers eighth. And Bottleston ninth. Matt Hine 10th. Ash Hill 11th. Ben Holmes, another one of our owned Bens, in 12th position. 13th. Matt Cleaver 14th. As Taron 15th, Staples 16th, John McCardle, Nigel Stock 17th, Rich 18th, Dan Tomlinson 19th, Jory Screwer in 20th, Morgan 21st, Ashford 22nd, Page 23rd, Williams 24th. We go down to Perry 25th, and Tempera, who didn't set a lap, down in 26th position now. You may get a finger wagging from the stewards not setting a lap time. We do ask, as part of the oNiD rules, that you set a representative lap time within the session. And if you don't, you may get a bit of a finger wagging from the stewards. However, he's going to take the track. I do hope he does. And we will hopefully see him racing very, very shortly.
26 cars then on the grid. Through the start not so straight grid here. That might affect people's traction a little bit, especially if someone gets a per getaway. Could be a bit of a compromise. But our drivers all ready now for the lights to come on for us to get underway for round 4 here of the oNiD4 British Championship. Waiting for the lights still. 35 minutes of racing to come. Plenty of slipstreaming opportunities. It was a very exciting racing last time out at Snetterton when we had the slipstream battles. Will we see the same here again? The lights are on. And we're away here for the feature race. It's a good start from Oliver Stone, who's got a slightly better jump than Jack Damble. Will have to go round the outside of T1 and eventually slots into line side by side between Ben Brown and Aidan Carter. In the background is Stather is trying to get a good run and make their way through on one of the oNiD cars. Now into the first chicane, where things will concertina up a little bit. Try and make it clean. Don't bounce off the curbs too much, as there's a car spinning off in the background. That's Ash Hill dropping down the order. Matt Cleaver involved as well. Now down the back end of the circuit, flat out all the way to the final chicane. In the slipstreams, they'll be a little bit dicey. Tires still cold in the dirty air as well, as it's wide there for one of the oNiD cars. That's Ben Brown getting onto the grass. Luckily, keeps the car pointing the right way. Will lose a place to Peter Stather, but slots back into 14th place. Though Monroe with the run is maybe got a look to the inside. The run, though, not quite enough to get them alongside, or is it? They tuck back into a bit more slipstream. Ben tries to come over to defend, take that Tyler line, makes a move. They're 4 wide into the final chicane. That's Lewis Mason, who got a little ambitious on the brakes, had to cut the chicane, and is going to have to give up certainly some of those positions, but they're still going nearly 4 wide into the first corner once again, fighting for position. But there barely is any into the first chicane once again. Ben Brown back up into P3. Lewis Mason has held on to P4. They might get a little finger wagging from the stewards after the race for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. Aidan Carter has got themselves into 5th ahead of Stouther. Monroe in 7th. Mahai in P8. And Mike Pfeiffer's is sort of the back of this, I say back of this train, but Tolfson is there as well. So down to 10th place all in this train. Then there's a little gap to Sean McGardle in the background. Couple of cars running wide. Quite a few cars running wide, taking a little trip to the Bon right here at Thruxton. Don't know if there's memo for that, but people a little more than knowing them all. Bottleson at Mahai heavy into the outside wall. It may be the fastest track, which means if you do find the wall, it will be at high speed, both of them having to tow to pit lane.
Get that in a replay as we go. There's already been an incident. He's already lost his rear wing as Reese Tarrant had spin there, and as he collected someone, so that's a separate incident. What's happened to those cars that we just saw on circuit having a moment? I'm going to try and get that on your screens for you, because there's already a separate issue as the leaders are still going at it. Matt High was, goodness, trying to find it. There we go. This will be it. Side by side. Oh, tires, and oh gosh.
But Tolfson, unfortunately, nowhere to go as Matt High came together with driver on their inside.
Ugh.
Hard to tell from that angle if they drifted out wide or if Matt High went in a bit too tight. But unfortunately, it has practically ended both of their races. Meanwhile, out at front, Jack Dan still leading the way, but Oliver Stone saying fastest lap of the race in pursuit. Only 200ths quicker, though. Not closing in too much. Might be difficult for them to get ahead, as Jack Dan so far displaying dominant pace. Terry Williams getting going from a slow moment here, as Ashford is dropping a few places. And we'll see a replay here into the chicane. Just loses the rear end on the first apex, tries to hang on to it, but unfortunately by the time they get to the exit has lost the car. We'll get going again for the slipstream. Just tags Ben Holmes, who was coming into the pit lane. That was very close between the pair of them indeed.
Was indeed. They get away with it, however, but that was mighty close. As we just have a brief issue with the stream, and we have lost things just very briefly, and we'll just take a quick pause just to see what's happened here. Scotty, you still with me? Oh dear. That isn't good. Oh, we have... well, folks, we have had a bit of an issue. We will just hang fire for a second, as we've just had a bit of an issue with the server for some random reason. We have just lost iRacing, so do bear with us as we just try to fix the issue. Scotty, are you still with us?
I hopefully am.
That was very interesting. Just going to rejoin the session, hope to get back to that racing action. That was interesting to watch for the first part, but then suddenly had an issue there as, for whatever reason, we had a bit of a lag moment, let's say.
Yeah, we've just lost images. There's been a connection issue. We've lost images here in the comms box. We'll hopefully have them back soon. Once we have identified the, let's say, loose cable somewhere and
Yes.
got it plugged back in. So yes, just bear with us for a moment, folks. We were only about 4, not even 5 minutes into the racing action, so still plenty of the race, over half an hour to go. Hopefully nothing too drastic will have happened while we've been missing images. I believe we should have images back fairly shortly.
Just bear with us, folks, just to make sure everything is all smooth as how it should be. As we are now back with images, he says. There we go. We are now back live with this fourth round. They are just having some technical issues on this end for some random reason. We are going to try and fight through them, and indeed we'll bring you all the actions we can.
Just check the cable to my screen because it's coming across quite pixelated.
Oh, wonderful. How interesting. Let's have a look.
So can't see. Ah, yes, that's much better. I can now read again. So Ulverstone, while we were having those issues, has taken the lead. Jack Dan now following in slipstream. Aidan Carter has passed Ben Brown. Dan Tomlinson is now falling into issues, and I believe Sean McGardle fell into issues too as we were sorting out those technical issues. Both those drivers taking a little tumble down the order. But Jack Dan closing in here on Ulverstone has the momentum and looks to be going for a move to retake the lead into the final chicane. Ulverstone doesn't seem to be finding that one too hard on the outside, and they will carry on as they qualified now. Peter Stather down in P6, trying to get around the outside of Luca Munro, has got the car there, becomes the inside, but then again switch sides through the final chicane. But Stather carrying the momentum and will take P5 out of that final chicane.
He will indeed, and I'll get back to it as they go through the first sector. Going down to the first chicane, it stays put, decides to stay put for now and think about making another move in the next couple of corners. It goes through to the high-speed sections as to where things do get enabled to then use the slipstream as they go through this middle sector. Might have a better chance of making a move very, very shortly as they do stay tucked underneath the rear wing. Does Luca Munro, and thinks about making a move around the outside. Stays put for now. Realizes that going down the main straight, it's probably better to stay in the slipstream as they go through into up down to the final chicane. Now this is where the overtaking opportunity is going to come. He stays tucked right in and maybe a bit more later on the brakes than the car ahead, but no, thinks better of it.
Very risky move to go for there. So, as I say, decides better of it. We'll look a little further back. Sean McArdle trying to catch up to the back of Jarrett Page, but is currently sitting in the wonderful 15th place, better known as reverse grid pole position for a sprint race coming up in just over 25 minutes time, but looks to the inside and has it coming together with Jarrett Page. Luckily gets on the brakes before rolling onto the racing line. Nigel Stock will take both those places. Sean McArdle will not be sitting on, well, actually might be. Jarrett Page spins off again. Trying to rejoin. Sean McArdle coming into the pits to make use of a quick repair, and it'll now be Philip Staples who takes reverse grid pole position in 15th place. Jarrett Page doesn't opt for the pit lane, gets pointing back the right way, and will carry on in P17.
Really well, as we see just a couple of cars continuing to make up some ground. There's a new fastest lap there from Oliver Stone, now finding a way to break away from Jack Dan. Asher is dropping down the order, so is Peter Staver. Both cars having an issue. There's a fight between Ash Hill, getting very close with Joey Screwer there for P8. And for side by side through the final chicane, it didn't look like there was much room between the two, but they somehow figured it out. They continue.
Really thought those two were going to interlock wheels there, but they kept far enough away from each other to not collide. They'll carry on within the top 10. Charlie Morgan on the back, and Matt Cleaver catching up to this battle as well to make it a potential 5-car train. Well, would be 5-car train, but Lewis Mason has taken a little spin and will fall out from the front of this train. We'll get a replay of how it happened into this first chicane. A lot of apex curb for the first apex there. A little bump on the second, but just loses rear end, something we've seen very commonly, mostly in the first 2 rounds. Seen a little bit of it, but not quite as much last week at Snetterton. But Lewis Mason falling to that rear end. And an important thing, as Ben Brown was mentioning last week, the tire wear isn't too severe on these cars, but if you do have a moment to have a spin like what Lewis Mason has, that's when you can really struggle with these tires, having damaged them, slid them across the top of the tarmac. So yeah, that could be a little bit of a struggle for Lewis Mason in the remaining 22 and a bit minutes of the race. The battle in front for P7 is still flying strong. Charlie Morgan has got themselves in front of Yori Schroer for now P8, and is going to try and get past Ashil to lead the way. And out at the front, Oliver Stone, as Ian mentioned, fastest lap of the race. Jack Dan, a bit of a slow lap, that lap, to lose the lead, as Ashil has had a moment. So has Matt Cleaver, so has Charlie Morgan, all having issues through the first chicane.
Well, still now a change for the lead now. Oliver Stone's has been caught, and it looks like it's been a lead change for Jack Dan getting back up ahead. Just trying to see if Ollie Stone had an issue. Can't see it. It might get a bit more of an idea if something happened previously. Let's go for a cheeky rewind and just see.
Imagine looking at that. This is just a natural slipstream run with momentum.
Yeah, I think so as well. And that's move done for the lead. Jack Dan's got back ahead for now. Ollie Stone wanting to get back at him, but for now is still stuck in that P2 position. We'll keep an eye on him as he goes along, because that's going to be interesting to see if he can rejoin that lead battle. We do have a battle up ahead, however. It is Charlie Morgan, Matt Cleaver, and Lewis Mason, and also Mike Peefers are looking to rejoin this battle as well, with Joey Scrorer not too far ahead of us either.
Yeah, so Ashell was previously leading this train with Yuri Shore in it, but they seem to have avoided having issues, unlike the rest of these, Mason, Cleaver and Morgan, coming to a bit of strife and falling back, but still part of their own train. That is, well, I say, Shore stayed out of strife. They've had their own strife now and have fallen back to this train. This Mason will get past will Matt Cleaver as well. They'll pull out, so will Charlie Morgan as they nearly come together. Charlie on the inside will get in front, and a small mistake from Shore, but drops him down to P11. But they're still in this train that Pipers is trying ever so hard to catch up to. And still being led by Lewis Mason, but Matt Cleaver really putting the pressure on. I think has intentions to lead this train. Maybe thinks that they can catch up to Ash Hill in front. But first, they've got to try and find a way past Lewis Mason. Of course, Slipstream will be very beneficial, as we've seen the leaders swap for position a little while ago. And looks like they might be doing so again. Like to timing screens. And yes, Oliver Stone has just taken the lead back. And what looks like fairly simple Slipstream move. But Jack Dan not waiting long and getting straight back past. Pipers has got behind Shore and has now got themselves in front for P11, though has lost a bit of time to this group, though could make it back up here if they fight side by side through the final chicane. Cleaver is slightly in front of Morgan, but Morgan's got the inside. It's going to be much later on the brakes, and Matt Cleaver will just have to slot back into the line, but they nearly come together on the exit. Big of a wobble there for Morgan. This is allowing Lewis Mason to break away side by side through T1. Cleaver on the outside now through the left-hander towards the chicane. It swaps, but then Morgan will have the inside again. Do they commit to the move? No, they back out on the inside. Cleaver holds on to the spot, but it's now about 2 seconds back from Mason in front.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to have to think about trying to get that move back past Charlie Morgan's lost it through that final chicane. It's going to cost him a position, and maybe even a little bit vulnerable to a car behind. And Mike Piffer's not too far behind either now. The lead battle has started to separate a little bit. Lap times are starting to show. Jack Dan managed to get back ahead. Jory Squirrel's dropped a position to Dan Tomlinson, however. He's going to go and try and fight up through the order. As, Jory goes a little bit wide through that fast right-hander and uses up all the curb available. I'm sure we'll be trying to get back past the car ahead in very shortly.
Not unless, I wonder if Fury is struggling on those tyres, having had a moment. Speaking of struggles, Jessica Perry has found herself well off into the grass at the first chicane. Let's just see what happened here coming out. Oh, got a slide trying to put the power down through the exit, through Seagrave. And yeah, really find themselves going for an adventure. Luckily finds the track again and will carry on, having dropped down to P19. Slipstream quite strong around here, though it hasn't stopped the field from opening up a little bit. Only a few cars really close enough to think about any overtakes. But yeah, field surprisingly spread out as we're about halfway through our opening race of the evening.
Yes, absolutely. Closest battle we have actually is Dan Tomlinson trying to get back past. Actually, is Mike Peffer's actually made the move on Dan Tomlinson?
Is looking to the inside is Dan Tomlinson. They nearly come together in the braking zone as Mike Pfeiffer's obviously not too keen on the outside line, but nothing they can do. Dan Tomlinson up to P11. Not too far behind Charlie Morgan. They'll want to catch up to that slipstream as soon as they can to try and stop Pipers from coming back with the slipstream. We'll go on board with Pipers into the first chicane. That was close on the brakes, but they've got they've opened up the second part of the chicane. That could help through the third part, but a little wide of the apex is like Dan Tomlinson to open the gap up a little bit. Pipers still in the slipstream here. They'll wait for the apex on the left-hander. Isn't going to help them through the right-hander. Struggling to keep it flat out here. You can hear them lifting, and that's allowed Dan Tomlinson to pull clear and hopefully to have, for their sake, break the slipstream. And towards final chicane, does look like Dan Tomlinson will be free to try and chase Charlie Morgan without any pressure from behind. As we see these two into the final chicane, Dan now taking very wide in, had a slight moment going
Oh.
into the corner, but so did Pfeiffer's cutting the chicane a little bit. We'll have a very poor exit and we'll lose the timeout there as they head towards T1. But both drivers pushing. Charlie Morgan saying a personal best as they try and open a gap up between them and Tomlinson.
Yep, absolutely. So nothing else happening as of it's a bit actually a bit about for 20 seconds at the back end of the field to see Matt Hyde trying to get onto or past Richard Ashford. Let's see if these guys can have a bit of a fight. It's the closest battle we have, one of the closest battles we have currently on circuit with just under a quarter of an hour to go.
Matt, of course, involved in a early instant this race, so is trying to recover any positions they can. They'll be hoping, of course, to get into the top 15, make use of that reverse grid, though that is seeming very unlikely from here. They've got about 30 seconds doing some quick maths to catch up, and with less than 15 minutes left in the race, I don't think they'll be catching up there. But Jessica Perry has gone for another pirouette. Unable to catch the car this time, though hasn't gone adventuring too far from the circuit, but we'll have to wait for quite a few cars to pass before they can get turned around and pointing the right direction again. Jared Page up to 18th from that, having had a moment with Sean McGardle a little bit earlier on. But we look back to the front of the field. Jack Dan leading the way once more and has opened up a gap to Oliver Stone this time by. We'll see them through line, see what lap times they have last time out. 10.6 for Jack Dan. Oliver Stone about 600ths of a second quicker with a 10.5. Closing in ever so slightly. Trying to pick up the slipstream once again to put on a charge. Oliver Stone will be hoping that they can get the slipstream, get a good opportunity, maybe on the final lap, to make a final lap move that won't give Jack Dan the time to re-overtake them. They have actually had a very good run through the first chicane and have closed up an awful lot and are going to be within striking distance through here if they can carry the speed through the long right-handers. Well, they might be flat out in qualifying, quite flat out in the race when you're following someone so closely in the dirty air, especially as the tyres maybe overheating a little bit, wearing out a bit. But Oliver Stone with run as we jump on board. We'll look to the inside. No defence from Jack Dan. No defence needed. Oliver Stone backing out in the end. And will opt to go through this chicane single file. Jack Dan using a bit more of the curbs through the final chicane and opening up a bit of breathing space for themselves, but doesn't stop Oliver Stone from having a much quicker lap last time around. Can Oliver Stone close in once again through the first chicane? We'll have to check back on that as Dan Tomlinson has closed up to Charlie Morgan now and is taking a wide line, maybe try and get some clean air on their tyres as Morgan taking the tighter line. Closing now. No defence from Morgan. Dan Tomlinson will go to the inside, will try and get the move done. And are they still side by side? Morgan backside, and through goes Tomlinson into the top 10. Meanwhile, further in front, Matt Cleaver has got themselves in front of this Mason for P8.
They have. That's move done for Matt Cleaver. Let's just have a look, see if we can get that. Had another crash. Sorry for Jessica Perry, sadly off the circuit once more. You know, they've been having some troubles here at Thruxton. Goes incredibly unstable through that final chicane. Oh, too much speed and clouds roll out. That's going to be a DNF for this race, potentially, if they've not already used their quick repair, and that's suspension damage as well.
Yeah, quite severe. I think they might have towed themselves to pit lane. While we were watching that, Yori Shore has taken a trip through pit lane. I think they've had to use their quick repair. It's dropped them down to 15th place, which I don't think they'll be too annoyed about, as we'll put them on pole for next race. Meanwhile, having been passed by Tomlinson, Charlie Morgan's dropped back a bit. I think he's made a mistake and is now being put under pressure from Nigel Stock in that Braun GP livery. with the inside into the final chicane. Charlie Morgan trying to hang it the long way around, still has himself alongside, but has to back out on that second apex, but has maybe got the better exit here. Gets to the inside once again for T1 into the right-handers. Jessica Perry comes back onto track, and just about slipping in front does Charlie Morgan across the front wing of Nigel Stock, and that will be Morgan holding on to P12 there. Spin for a car in the background. That's that car, I think, spinning as Ulverstone has got themselves back in front of Jack Dan. Though it looks like Jack Dan has things under control with how closely they are following Ulverstone through here. Let's just get a replay. Ulverstone making the move down the inside. Just, again, had the speed from the slipstream and got it done easily enough. But Jory Shore has taken another trip through pit lane. Maybe track limit or incident points. Drive-through penalty, and is now residing in 17th. Outside of that reverse grid, Sean McGardle now takes that provisional pole as Charlie Morgan and Nigel Stock side by side through final chicane. This again gets a little more awkward, and Nigel Stock coming together with Ben Holmes, who was trying to unlap themselves there, and is spun round at the pit entry, and is going to have to wait for a gap. It might actually just try not to give yourself too much damage, but it's going to reverse back into pit lane, which I'm not sure if reversing in pit lane is allowed, but is definitely a safer way to recover that car. Matt Cleaver onto the back of Ash Hill now for P7 through the right-hander of Church. Cleaver going to use the run from the slipstream and will pull to the inside. Nigel Stock in the pit lane drops out of the reverse grid and promotes Adrian Rich into that provisional pole for next race as Matt Cleaver gets moved on for P7. 9.3 seconds to start third in front. That's going to be a difficult gap to close down in the remaining 8 and a bit minutes that we have in this feature race.
You're keeping on that position. It's been passed around like a hot potato as Ollie Stone, again, trading positions with Jack Dan, looking to make another move.
Seems like both of these drivers could win. It's not necessarily about who's quicker. It's about who is going to be leading as they come out of that chicane on the final lap. Ulverstone, another fastest lap of the race as they put themselves back into the lead, showing that, yeah, they do have the pace. They're able to follow Jack Dan and confidently make the overtake, but Jack Dan is always able to return the favour next lap around. So it's all about who can do it on the final lap. Ash Hill trying to come back now at Matt Cleaver. Let's go to the inside and will get through into the final chicane. But can Matt Cleaver respond? Will these two sort of be trading positions, much like our two leaders? Matt Cleaver not wanting to wait so long this time. Looks to the inside into T1. Is it going to be moved on? Ash Hill is still there as they come towards the braking zone. But by the time they get there, has dropped back. Matt Cleaver back into P7. How long will it last this time, though?
Not very long because the move's just been done again. But a couple of cars have had a crash. Squirrel and Holmes have been noted of having to come in together. Jory goes off circuit there. Oh, that's a very peculiar pull off. He's jumped back to pits, and Ben Holmes has had an incident of his own. Let's see what's happening. He exits. He's actually exiting the pit lane from a pit stop. It says he's had a crash. Just decides to pull off.
I wonder if he's having issues of some sorts. Thought he'd got them resolved, came out pit lane and was like, hang on, that's not fixed. But Tolfson now through the chicane, that's awkward. Driver locking up going right, then but Tolfson losing the rear end on the exit. Very well avoided from the drivers behind, and finds themselves trying to turn around into pit entry, realizes, hang on, I'm just going to have to take a little trip through pit lane here. I can't really reverse back onto the racing line, and has found themselves dropping to P20 after that. Ashel, Matt Cleaver still fighting. This time, though, they've been joined by Lewis Mason, who is first of all going to be trying to get themselves in front of Matt Cleaver, but then more importantly, will be trying to get in front of Ash Hill, who they're fighting with in the AM class. They've already dispatched of Cleaver, who kind of looked to give up the position there on the exit of the first chicane. Maybe seeing that these two are in the same class that Matt Cleaver is not in, and deciding, you know what, you two go fight at it. There's only 5 minutes left in this race. I'm just going to play it safe and sit back here, get the popcorn, and enjoy the battle.
Yeah, that's not the worst decision. Is reverse grid, so he'll start a bit more further up the field for the reverse grid race. Aidan Carter's had an incident. Aidan Carter's off. P3's off. What has happened to Aidan Carter?
Spinning off on the exit of the first chicane, just ran a little bit too wide, dipped the wheel over the curb and unsettled the car as Aidan Carter was trying to put the power down. That is going for a spin. They spin it back around facing the right way, but it has dropped them down off of the podium. Ben Brown will take up that final podium position, which I'm sure he will be quite pleased about, having had a podium in his last race a couple of rounds ago at Brands Hatch Indy in the sprint race. So second podium.
That's a car going wide. That's Jessica Perry again. Sorry to interrupt you. That was that Taco Bell branded car. Other fast food takeaways are available. Having a moment of his own. Their own.
So, Jack Dan trying to break away at the front, has a 3/4 second lead to Oliver Stone as we're getting into the final phase of this race. Can Oliver Stone close that up again and make a late overtake to steal the win from Jack Dan, or has Jack Dan covered this off? Are they going to be able to hold on to the lead? Lewis Mason, though, closing in on Ash Hill, setting a personal best lap with the slipstream, hasn't been able to make the move yet. Are they waiting for the final lap to make sure that Ash Hill doesn't have a chance to come back with the counter attack, or are they struggling to get themselves alongside? We will have to wait and see. 3 minutes left, 3 laps to go as our leaders have started another lap, and Oliver Stone going for the move into the first chicane here with 3 laps to go. I can't imagine they'll hold on to the lead from here to the end.
No, I don't think so. He's going to be another overtaking opportunity, especially down towards that final chicane where it seems like they've been doing the same move in and out for the past 2 laps. But there's only a very limited chance to do it, and I have a feeling if you're in that second position right at the start of the race, start of the lap should I say, it's going to be an easy move for the win if you can get the timing right, if you can get the move done at the right time on the right lap in that final chicane.
So now the question is, does Jack Dan sit in second and wait it out for the final lap? Well, I think you could hear the answer there, lifting on the run to the final chicane. Jack Dan had the perfect run to get back up to the lead. They don't want it yet. They've fallen back though through that final chicane. 2 laps to go as our leaders cross the line. It is not about who's quicker here. It's about playing the games, being in the right place at the right time. Lewis Mason being overtaken by Matt Cleaver down the inside of Church Corner. We don't typically see moves there, but Matt Cleaver had the run at the right time and has gone for the move, closing back to Ash Hill. I wonder if they'll be taking P7 here at the end. Philip Staples has had a moment all by themselves. They are in no man's land, so they should be able to hold on to 13th place, provided they get going in decent time. Doesn't seem like they will. Sean McArdle is going to make up a place, and maybe Adrian Rich, maybe not quite. Looks like Staples has got going just about in time. Nigel Stock has also gone in front of Jarrett Page. Jack Dan going for the lead now into the final chicane on the penultimate lap. He is going to try and make a run for it on this final lap to stay in front. Oliver Stone is going to have to re-overtake Jack Dan if they want to win. Can Jack Dan take their second win of the series, or will it be Oliver Stone taking their third? Fastest lap of the race for Jack Dan, showing that they mean business. Jumping over the curbs through the first chicane are both of our leaders as they now head on to the flat out section. 4/10 is the gap. Oliver Stone following Jack Dan in the slipstream. You can imagine that Jack Dan will defend this, as it is the final lap through the right-hander of Goodwood. Now heading through Village and into Church. Does Jack Dan have the momentum? They're closing to the inside. Goes Jack Dan. They're going to cover. Oliver Stone has no choice but go the outside. Who will be later on to the brakes into the final chicane? Oliver Stone's going to try and hold it around the outside, but they can't brake late enough. Jack Dan will hold on, and they will take their second win of the series here as they cross the line at Thruxton. Taking win for race 7 of our British oNiD4 season. Thus, Mason, Ash Hill has dropped a couple of places, has dropped down to P9 as Ben Brown takes home their second podium of the series. Back-to-back podiums for them after they stepped into the comms box last week. We jump back to this battle. Matt Cleaver in front of this. Mason, Ash Hill falling out of this battle while we were watching the lead. Fall into P9. Looks like Cleaver will hold on, being a little bit wide on the entry to that final chicane. Will hold on to take, actually slows down on the exit. Ash Hill comes into the pits. What's going on here?
Oh. Interesting. We'll keep an eye on that. Was that a drive-through? Track limits?
I don't know, but Lewis Mason takes P7 from that. Dan Tomlinson gets up to P8. Ash Hill takes P9. Matt Cleaver rounds off the top 10. And yeah, very confusing moment there at the end of our feature race.
Yes, indeed it was. We are already gridding for race 2. I'm just going to take a very brief moment just to double check some of the settings on our end, just to be sure everything is okay.
So do remember, we will be having a top 15 reverse grid for our sprint race coming up. And that will mean Adrian Rich will be on pole position. So they will, alongside Philip Staples.
Indeed, I'm just waiting to see, because I do believe we may be changing servers. I'm not entirely sure. We're just waiting for things to happen on our end. We're just keeping an eye on things as well, and maybe a second server we have just to wait for launch, as everything is just taking a pause. I think on our end, thankfully, I think we're actually having some server issues.
While they hopefully sort themselves out, let's just run through that order from the first race. Jack Dan taking their second win of the series, holding on in front of Stone on that final lap. They put themselves in the right place at the right time to take the win there. Ben Brown will take their second podium of the series, back-to-back from Brands Hatch a couple of weeks ago, as Aidan Carter mistake late on in the race, drop them off down to P4. Luca Monroe will take P5 ahead of Peter Stather in P6. Lewis Mason, top of the AM runners, will finish P7, ahead of Dan Tomlinson in P8. Ash Hill will have settle for second in the AMs, in P9, with Matt Cleaver rounding out the top 10. Mike Pfeifers will take P11, have Charlie Morgan in 12th, Sean McGardle in 13th, Philip Staples front row for the race coming up will be finished 14th, and Adrian Rich on pole, finishing in that reverse grid position, pole position in 15th. Matt High just missing out on that reverse grid, having had that incident towards the start of that race. Got up to 16th, was 4.3 seconds off of that front grid starting position. Nigel Stock, we take 17th, have Ashford in 18th, but Hofson, also involved in that incident, would be 19th. Reese Taryn will round out the top 20, have Jack Page in 21st. Dre Shore will take 22nd, have Jessica Perry in 23rd, Ben Holmes 24th, Terry Williams 25th, and Tempera in 26th. Those is as how our 26 drivers finished the feature race. And in a couple of minutes after the drivers have a bit of time to warm themselves back up, we'll be getting away for 25 minutes of our reverse grid sprint race.
Yep, absolutely. And my suspicions were confirmed. We have entered a bit of a warm-up session for the drivers. We'll go back to live images of the circuit, and we see cars are just back out of circuit, just getting used to redriving the circuit. It'll be a bit of a shorter race, this second race, but yes, that top 15 reverse is going to cause some issues for those, especially down, who will end up down low on the grid, as they have finished winning the race. Yeah, be interesting to see them fight through, and how easy or hard it will be for them to do so.
And make sure you don't get caught up in any incidents like that one we saw at Church Corner that affected Matt High, Matt High, but Tolfson and another driver I can't quite remember that got caught up in that incident. But Tolfson completely innocent, nothing to do with the incident, but the two cars spinning in front of them had nowhere to go. And yeah, got caught up. We've seen a very from second race last week. Sorry, I see the checkered flag out on warm up. Very messy start as the drivers came down the back straight towards Brundle into Nelson Corner. Some drivers picking their braking point a little earlier than others, and it having pretty major consequences for some drivers. We've seen some brilliant perspectives from drivers just behind that incident, having to take avoiding action and doing so very well for some of them. We've seen how you can just scrape by and avoid what could be a very difficult and very frustrating moment at the start of the race. But we have seen for Botolfson how you can easily get involved. The grid is lining up now for our second race, ready to go. The lights are coming on now. And lights out, away we go here for the second race. It's a good start again from second place, even better from third place as they head towards the first chicane. Though Sean hasn't quite been able to get to the front, as Matt High has started on pole.
Oh my goodness!
Was in second, and we've already had drama in the mid-pack.
That was Aidan Carter involved, and potentially Ben Brown.
Looked like Ben was upside down there and has had to return to the pits. So having had two podiums back to back, will not continue. Let's see a replay here coming into the chicane. Ben just catching the back of one car and collecting Aidan Carter. How disappointing for the pair of them. Nothing that Aidan Carter could do. Ben Brown now sitting on sidelines. Matt High has held on to pole position ahead of Staples, as Sean McGardle has dropped to P4, as drivers fighting for position as they come into the final chicane here.
Yep, absolutely. High Staples, Pfeifers, as they were on the grid. managing to hold the top 3 there is... Oh, my 5 has actually been overtaken now for P4, and P3 now going to Sean Mercado, who has actually got him fighting back for position. Python's going to try and regain that P3, tries to do so on the inside, can't quite make it. Well, actually, it does make it work. The car on the inside was Sean Mercado, who's had to yield back to 4th position, and his car's spinning in the background. Charlie Morgan's gone off the circuit, is now going to rejoin and keep on going. The oNiD Racing livery car number 31 in the midst of that middle pack of cars in the midfield is going to continue trying to get the slipstream, try and make up some positions, but very briefly for a potential moment went off circuit.
We've seen quite a few drivers running wide in the first couple of laps last race, not as many this time. They learned their lesson. Matt High out front is trying to break away from the field as Mike Pfeiffer's is trying to get themselves to 2nd place. Looking to the outside of Staples, it isn't going to work there. All the drivers behind trying to filter through. It has not worked out for Ash Hill, who is plummeting down the order, facing the wrong way on the exit of the chicane. Is going to have to wait for the majority of the field. Will spot a gap just about gets going before Terry Williams came up on the scene and will carry on in 21st. Let's see how it happened, fighting with Matt Cleaver into the chicane. Matt on the outside, that turns to the inside. And was there a touch there? I think there might have been.
Very slight touch, enough to spin him around, enough to send the car into the spin. I think it might have just been a little bit of a love tap.
Matt Cleaver has had issues of their own now and has fallen to behind Ash Hill. Jared Page separating the pair of them as Charlie Morgan has come into strife, running out wide onto the grass. There goes slotting behind Ben Holmes as they come through Church Corner, but Butolfson might have enough momentum here to pass them as well for 13th place. In the slipstream, will have the momentum, looks to the inside, and it should be moved on as it's 2 by 2 in front. Nigel Stock, Shorey fighting as a couple of drivers, Stock included, and Shorey unable to make the final part of the chicane. There'll be track limits for them as they're nearly 3 wide, heading up to T1 here. Careful driver in the middle, they're having to back out. That might have been Reece Tarrant, I think, was having to back out there. But Botolfson now looking to the inside of Ben Holmes. Will now be the outside. It turns back to the inside. Has Botolfson got the move done on Holmes? No, not yet. Holmes holds it around the outside, has the momentum. And this is actually given the opportunity. Morgan coming through, snaps up both positions.
Oh, opportunistic or what? That was right place, right time. Gets the move done. Up into 11th for Morgan. Everyone else is going to be behind him thinking, oh, come on, I really wanted to get past you. What are you doing?
Tried to make one move, and yeah, you get that move done. You don't gain any positions because someone else took advantage. Oliver Stone trying to fight past Stather in front, trying to keep up with Jack Dan, who's already up to P4. Might be making a move on Philip Staples. Is making a move on Philip Staples up to P3. There's Staples not getting a good run out of the chicane. Meanwhile, Shorey has had issues, and the chicane has come together, spinning on the exit of the chicane. Didn't quite see who that was getting into the rear end of them, but they're going to have a fair amount of damage from that. Shorey car very bent up. Now let's have a look at the replay. Nigel Stock in front. Shorey just too aggressive on the change of direction. Lost the rear end. Cars have to go each and every way, but Thompson clips him, points him right way. And then that 40... No, that's not 43. Can't quite pick out the number on that dark blue car there that collected them, unfortunately. Shorey back to pit lane with too much damage. Shame, and yeah, not going to be a good result for them.
Yeah.
It was Adrian Rich there as well spotted, that unfortunately collecting there with damage by themselves. Look at the car. Now becoming a lawnmower. Rich struggling with that damage. You can see the front end's just a bit bent. These corners, they're not easy flat out in the... When you have as much damage as you do, yeah, you can tell that suspension is not the way it should be.
No.
Yeah. those corners go from being easy flat to easy spins.
Yeah, absolutely.
We cut back to this battle now. Batolfson leading ahead, Reese Tarn, Charlie Morgan, Ben Holmes, Dan Tomlinson, all in the same oNiD livery, following as spin for Reese Tarn has collected Charlie Morgan. They'll drop to the back of the pack. Ash Hill is going to take advantage and find their way through. Can Tarn get going for this group of cars? Catches up. Not quite. Jessica Perry will make their way through, but Luca Monroe with a good run is going to make it 3 wide, or are they? They sensibly back out there, as that would have been an almost certain coming together as their lines converged. Through the right-hander, into the back of Jessica Perry goes Reese Tarn, and both of them go for another spin.
See what happened with Reese into the first chicane. Car 31 behind them. We're going to go into the brakes and doink. Around they go. That was a love tap if I've ever seen one. They rejoined and then had another incident with that was it was
Jessica Perry.
Jessica Perry, yeah. And lightest of touches, and then around they go, just returning the favour to what he experienced from the car 31 into the first chicane. Thought, if I have to experience it, let's share love with someone else. That's damage as well.
Yeah, damage, front wing damage. Meanwhile, up at the front, Mike Pfeifers is trying to come back at Jack Dan, who has taken second place, and on that's not going to work on that tight line. Pfeifers. Nope. Car sliding out through Church Corner, and despite slipstream, look at the momentum that they've lost. Jack Dan now 3.6 seconds to catch up to Matt High at the front of the field if they want to win this race. Still plenty of time, just under 17 minutes to do so. This is Jar Page into the final chicane, just having a little wobble, and goes for a spin by themselves. Luckily again, not collecting anyone, and reverses away from the racing line before anyone does.
Thank goodness. That was a very interesting moment for him there, but he's able to get it out of the way and gets going again once more. Thank goodness.
So Ben Holmes trying to chase down Batolfson for P9 now, as Reese Tarn has headed into pit lane to repair that damage that we've seen them pick up from those two separate incidents.
If they do, we'll stick with this battle. Ben Holmes catching the back of Bottleson for the P9 position, and just under a quarter of an hour to go. A shorter race, shorter in nature, but it provides a less opportunity for those to make moves, and that grid again has spread out once more. Taryn also in the pits as well. That's a potential drive-through or track limits, maybe instant points. I don't think they've been involved in any crashes or damages or anything like that, so they'll continue. Oh, that was track limits for Bottleson. He'll be definitely getting a finger wagging from the iRacing UI there. What's a few instant points to add to his tally if he has any.
Defending will be the inside of the first chicane here, or maybe just letting Ben Holmes through in the end.
Not much of a defense. And not much of a defense. I'm not against it, but I can understand the annoyance of some, especially our viewers, would want to see some cars potentially fighting for position instead of maybe letting one another pass. But understandable move from that driver, maybe allowing the other driver to go past because he is potentially a little bit more slower, and he knows that maybe fighting and maybe will hurt his race overall prospects of getting it back up the field. Who is making it the way back up the field is a recovering Aidan Carter from that chaotic race start. He gets back past Ashford for position, and in the background is that Morgan fighting. Oh, it's a car around. That's car number 8, and that's Adrian Rich sitting in the middle of the circuit. And thank goodness he didn't become a bit of a kind of rolling barrier on the curb potentially. And was this just him by himself? I think it was. Goes wide, puts a wheel on the grass, and then holds the brakes, doesn't roll onto the racing line, but is in a bit of an awkward position. Eventually does get going again eventually.
bit of a disappointing race for them so far, having started on the front row. Oliver Stone now looking to demote Mike Pfeiffer's off of the podium positions as they try and chase down Jack Dan, who's just over 3 seconds up the road. Jack Dan has half the gap to Matt High out front, so give it another few laps, and Jack Dan will be fighting for the lead. In the slipstream, though, for Oliver Stone, they're closing. They look to the inside here, and what should be an easy move into the final chicane is done nice and simply. 3 seconds to Jack Dan. Can they close it in? Or is Jack Dan going to try and run away with this race once they catch up and pass Matt High? 8 tenths quicker for Jack Dan that lap, as we see, but Tolson has had a spin through the final chicane.
As indeed. Let's see what's happened. Down into final chicane, getting past car 300, which is a back marker. Oh, never mind. That was actually car 500 of Ben Holmes, should I say. I think that was also for the positions and dropping down the order and rejoining back in 18th. That's going to be a race to get for Bottleson.
It was looking good, but that mistake has dropped them back quite a bit. Mike Pfeiffer's holding on to the back of Oliver Stone, trying to use the slipstream and run with Oliver Stone, hoping to catch a higher position, though might be unlikely. 12 minutes to go. It's unlikely they'll be catching Jack Dan, as Oliver Stone's still slower than Jack Dan last lap, despite putting a personal best lap in. So we'll see the lap times round this time. Matt High responding to Jack Dan with the personal best, still loses 4 tenths of a second that lap. Oliver Stone losing 2 tenths still to Jack Dan, as Mike Pfeiffer sets personal best with the slipstream from Oliver Stone. And all 4 of those drivers in the 110s. No one else behind in the 110s. 111s, 120 there for Philip Staples last lap. They've had a bit of a disappointing lap and have dropped down a few positions. Then you can see those times. Aidan Carden, next driver to be in the 110 as they continue their comeback. But Sean McGardle on the back of Luca Munro, trying to fight for P12 here through the first chicane.
Almost had the position as well, was side by side until a breaking point, and then Munro able to hold position for now. We'll see them go through this high speed section. As we said, they're completely flat, even on race trim. Yes, they can be. They might have to lift a little bit because of their cars being slightly heavier, but on a normal qualifying lap, they are completely flat along this circuit, and they are able to completely just essentially cruise as Mike Pfeiffer's dropping down the order. Just going to quickly have a look at that. We'll actually go back to replay in a brief moment as the leader's getting quite close. And just keep an eye on the leaders, because that might be a evolving battle. Ben Holmes actually as well, getting near to Philip Staples. What happened to Pfeiffer's? Let's have a look. Into the final chicane he goes wide on entry, and like, so you know what, I'm going to take the slow down, I'm going to take the chicane. Let's not give a reason for iRacing to give me a penalty, and then get us going once more. So nothing horrid, but sadly dropping out of the podium position, or near to the podium position, should I say?
Yeah, drops back from Oliver Stone and will miss out on that slipstream from now on. Someone who will be missing slipstream is Jack Dan as they go for the lead of the race, though I'm sure they'd much rather have that lead to the inside as they come into the final chicane. Not much of a defence from Matt High. They'll be looking to use the slipstream to try and stay in front of Oliver Stone. 9.5 minutes for Stone to chase down 3 seconds. Will it happen? We'll have to keep an eye and see. With that move, Jack Dan another 3 tenths faster than Stone. As we look a little further back, Ben Holmes is getting past Philip Staples. Lewis Mason ahead of Peter Stather, and Luca Munro is still in front of Sean McArdle. Plenty of fights in the top 15 at the moment.
Very much
Ben
so.
Holmes trying to defend from Philip Staples now through the first chicane. Staples trying to open up the line, force Ben Holmes to defend the line, compromise their line, compromise their momentum, And Philip Stable's trying to use that to make an overtake. Has the momentum here. This isn't the easy part of the track to make the pass. The car sliding out wide to the inside goes Philip Staples. This is going to be a bit sketchy of a place to run side by side, but they make it work. That's compromised both of their momentum. Still side by side as Dan Tomlinson closes up, but they have Ash Hill going down the inside of them. It's 2 by 2. The only cars on the outside, Staples and Ash Hill on the inside. As they come up towards the chicane, or they go Ash Hill looking, maybe making it 3 wide down the middle. We'll get to the inside. Ben Holmes and will get the move done. Ben Holmes sliding out wide, gets onto the grass. Got these place to Dan Tomlinson as well.
Oh, lovely midfield battle that was. They're going to start to calm down a little bit, I think, for the next couple of corners, as the 2 oNiD drivers have lost out to those 2 cars up ahead. Of course, you know, team bias, go oNiD, but it's lovely to see them fighting away as Ash Hill all goes wide, and that's actually going to give them the position. So I'm going to keep on talking about them making moves and making mistakes. That was a commentator's curse if I've ever seen one.
Ben Holmes trying to come back at Dan Tomlinson. Are they go like to the inside? They sure are. And it's going to be side by side again through Goodwood Corner, but this time Ben Holmes getting the move done. Dan Tomlinson can tuck back into the slipstream, as in the background Ash Hill loses another place to Luca Monroe, and maybe another to Sean McArdle, who's right there. Dan Tomlinson trying to come back at Ben Holmes with the slipstream towards final chicane. Closing as he goes look to the inside. No, he's got to be patient. Not being patient. In the background is Sean McArdle trying to look to the inside of Luca Monroe, has pressured Monroe into mistake as to cut the chicane. Sean cuts the exit of the chicane themselves. Both of them, though, staying in front of Ash Hill, who will be in 13th place. Not so happy, I imagine, seeing the cars in front of him shortcut the chicane to some extent. And we'll be looking to try and make up those places rather soon. Through the first chicane, you can see different lines on display again. Ash Hill taking some of the apex curb on the exit. Might unsell the car, might upsettle their momentum, but they'll also have to look towards their mirrors. In the background, Ian Carr up to 14th place now. Is starting to catch up this train, and with 6 minutes to go, we'll be trying to pass as many cars as they possibly can to try and hold on to their lead in the championship coming into this round. Mike Pfeiffer's to the inside of Peter Stather. They're side by side through chicane, nearly come together. Stather has to make avoiding action, gets onto the grass a little bit doing so, but keeps the car pointing the right way. They will have dropped outside of the top 5.
Yep, absolutely. We'll look to... Oh, what's happened to Monroe? Oh, it's a crash at final 10. Ash Hill, Monroe, all involved. And that's... How in the world has that happened?
Both towing back to pit lane. Here's the replay. Philip Staples in the middle. Luca Monroe, big jump over the curb, is losing the car. And Ash Hill just unsided behind Philip Staples, not able to avoid in time, and gets into the back end, loses their front wing. And both of them returning to pit lane as they just awkwardly passed the pit entry. That'll be 2 free places for all of our drivers behind them. But fighting now, Ben Holmes, Dan Tomlinson, both trying to fight their way past Philip Staples for P8. Round the outside for Dan Tomlinson. Can he get the move to work with the momentum? He does indeed. Ben Holmes follows through and will try and take P8 for himself. Looking to the inside of Tomlinson. Tomlinson not fighting that one too hard. Maybe even the door open though for Philip Staples. Go try and set down the inside. Though can't hold it side by side through the final chicane. Has to back out. And Dan Tomlinson will hold on to P9 as the drivers behind Sean McArdle and Aidan Carter catch up with the fighting.
Yeah, not too far behind, and Aidan Carter's going to have to get past Sean McArdle in the first instance. That's going to be a move hopefully done in the next couple of corners. He looks to have the pace and will look to recover and maybe actually potentially get into the top 10. It'll be a bit of a consolation prize for Aidan, judging how his race has gone, and that's going to make it a lot more easier. It's very close contact between the two as Sean McArdle takes Takes some avoiding action now as Staples going wide through this chicane. Oh, Staples goes almost wide again, almost into Aiden. Realises he's on the inside, gives him space. I think that's Aiden going to be making a move and thankfully getting past Staples without getting any more damage on his car.
So past one car for Carter up into P11. They're going to try and go for the top 10 now. Slipstreaming Sean McArdle towards the final chicane with just over 3 minutes to go. They pull to the inside and they will be through for the final top 10 position. They can see two fellow oNiD cars, Ben Holmes and Dan Tomlinson, who have been fighting quite a bit recently in front. Can Aiden Carter catch up and get themselves up to P8? They won't be going any further than that. 8 seconds between Nigel Stock and Ben Holmes will be a little too much to ask for in the final 3 minutes for Aiden Carter. But still, 2 places up for grabs. Someone else trying to make up a final place is Oliver Stone. They won't be catching Jack Dan, who's checked out in the front to 3.8 seconds. Look at the momentum that Oliver Stone has immediately on the exit of Church Corner, already pulling alongside. You have to imagine it'll be an easy move to get done on the brakes into the final chicane, though. Is Matt High going to try and hang it around the outside here? No, eventually does back out, and Oliver Stone has free reign of the apexes through the final chicane. Matt High, though, is going to tuck into Slipstream. Can Matt High maybe make a counter-attack here as Oliver Stone sets a personal best? Or is Matt High going to have to settle for the final podium place? He's closing, doesn't go for a move into the first chicane.
Oh, I might say in Slipstream for this middle sector. There's only a couple of laps left to go. You may have to settle for this P3. There's a good 10-second gap between him and Lewis Mason for 4, so he has the space. He has the ability to maybe just think, oh, actually, hold on a minute, let's just hang fire maybe and reassess my situation. P3 is still a good result, but he's still hanging on to the Slipstream.
The all-important Slipstream. Is Matt High in the right place at the right time to make a move for P2, or are they going to fall back? They're closing. Oliver Stone defends the inside, but Matt High has the momentum, gets the nose in front on the outside, but doesn't break enough to hold it the long way through. Jack Dan will cross the line.
It's going to be close to the last lap.
I said no fastest lap of the race. He will have to slow down if he wants to make this the final lap of the race. Does Jack Dan want to do that? Or do they want to push another lap of the race? Aiden Carter has got themselves in front of Dan Tomlinson for P9. Next up is Ben Holmes. Of course, Jack Dan might not be aware, but it would be in their championship interests to try and force Aiden Carter to finish a little bit lower down. So if they can cut this race 1 lap shorter, that might be the difference between Carter getting up into P8 and having to settle for P9. We also have this fight over P4. Lewis Mason has got up to the back of Mike Pfeiffer's and will be trying to take the first spot off of the podium. Ben Holmes has also caught up to Nigel Stock, who has made up a mistake. That could be another potential place for Aiden Carter. Jack Dan out of the final corner will not slow down, and so we will have the 1 more lap here. Lap 22 will be the final lap here. 1 more lap for all the drivers to fight for their places. As we have a little look at Matt Cleaver down in 14th place. They're going to be a little bit disappointed with that, having started in P5 this race. Ben Holmes through the final chicane under big pressure from Aiden Carter, has a slightly better exit, thinking about the inside, but not enough momentum to make that move done. 2 cars in front of them coming on to this final lap for Aiden Carter. Can they get themselves up to P7? It might be difficult as Ben Holmes wants to take P7 for themselves. Looking to the inside of Nigel Stock, pressures them wide of the first apex into the chicane, but they hold on to the place for now. Ben Holmes running out wide, running out over that curb, avoids spinning like what Aiden Carter did at the end of the previous race, but that does allow Carter to get alongside them. Jack Dan will head through the final chicane and will make it 2 for 2 tonight, winning both the feature and sprint race, with Oliver Stone taking another second place, closely followed by Matt High. They'll take the final podium position. Lewis Mason to the inside of the final chicane will take P4 as Pfeiffer's tries to come back on the exit. It's not going to be enough. Pfeiffer's will have to settle for P5. Into the final chicane, Carter on the inside of Nigel Stock is going to try to take P7, and they will indeed. Ben Holmes trying to see if they can get the exit of the chicane to take P8, but it's not going to be enough. Nigel Stock holds up for P8. Ben Holmes settles for P9. Sean McGardle challenges Dan Tomlinson for the final spot of the top 10, but cannot take it. We'll have to settle for P11 as the drivers fight across the line. Matt Cleaver will come home in 14th, but Thruxton 15th and Ashford in 16th after that chaotic, as usual, reverse grid race.
All the other cars below 16th position are seeing checkered flag being a lap down. We've had some retirements. Rich Monroe, Perry, Taryn, Tempera, should I say, all being DNFs for this evening. Now let's go to the results for the final race of this evening, and for whatever reason it's not allowing me to bring up the results. I can tell you it's Jack Dan, Ollie Stone, then Matt High, Lewis Mason, Mike Preefers, Peter Stather, Aidan Carter, Nigel Stock, Ben Holmes, then Dan Tomlinson for your top 10. There's Sean McArdle, Philip Staples, Charlie Morgan, Matt Cleaver, Runar Bottleson, Richard Ashford, Jarrett Page, Ash Hill, Ben Brown, Terry J. Williams. 21st, I'll go to Jerry Screwer. And we have some DNFs, Adrian Rich, Luca Monroe, Jessica Perry, Reese Taryn, and Apollo Tempera, who did not see the checkered flag.
So another wild reverse grid race. Some drivers able to fight their way through, others getting caught up in incidents, unfortunately for them. But yeah, a lot happened that race. The slipstream powerful as always. Made for some good racing round Thruxton here.
Yeah, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. And we only look to increase the action going into next week, as we will be back live on Thursday night, a week today, for round 5 of the oNiD Simhound British oNiD4 series. And such as kind of amateur commentator that I am, I completely forget to see where we are next week.
To start the second half of the British oNiD4 season, we're heading to Alton Park, running the Island Circuit. That is the same one they use in the BTCC, with the sort of tight hairpin, skipping out the first chicane for making the run to the second chicane. There'll be some interesting racing, not so many opportunities for slipstreaming, but certainly some very interesting corners, some good racing opportunities for sure. Hopefully we can see some more great racing there.
Yep, absolutely. And whilst we are still live, I'm going to see if I can quickly get this. Lewis Mason in the background deciding to do some celebratory donuts. Why in the world not? Thank you one and all for watching. Thank you for your support. It's been a pleasure to bring you this week's round 4. Next week, Alton Park. We'll see you there. Scotty, any final words before we dash off for the evening?
No, make sure to tune into our other series. Next stream will be on Saturday around 3:45 p.m. UK time, as we have the final round of our Britsy Endurance Championship for 2025. The 5th round, 6 hours of Valencia. Who can win some final prizes? Who can win the Pro and Am Championships? Make sure you tune in for our final ACC Endurance race before we continue our normal Season 3 action on Sunday with the 100 series that will be at Imola this weekend. We've seen some very interesting strategy at Le Mans this week, or last weekend, as there was some rain. Will Imola provide some more interesting opportunities? Make sure you tune in and find out. On Monday, we have the GT3 Festival at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, where the rain will be arriving and making it quite sketchy for some of the GT3 cars through Arouge and Raidillon. Then on Tuesday, we also have a continuation of our John Cooper Works Mini World Tour, where we will be at Salzburg Ring for some more chaotic action. three 15-minute races in that, with the third being a full reverse grid. So if you liked the chaotic action you've seen tonight, make sure to tune in on Tuesday for some more of that. On Wednesday, we have our Simhound Academy, helping those that are maybe a little less experienced with them on Ultimate improve their skills, hone them, and gain some confidence. They will be racing at Fuji this next week on Wednesday without the chicane, before we indeed return on Thursday. So hopefully we'll catch you then. Until next time, thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Hope you all thoroughly enjoyed the action as much as we did, and we shall see you next time. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.